we're going to go into a demo application that we built on last week's call using a prompt, and we're going to go find out what was actually built and what is fake so that we can basically see how the AI builds pretend content and what we can do about it, how we can keep that from getting in our way as we move our applications toward production. And we may do other little demonstrations or examples along the way. A lot of times as we're going, questions come up that end up creating fun little example scenarios. So we will cover those. Don't hesitate to ask questions as we go along here. I am going to share my screen. Here we are. Everybody should see a Lovable app. It says Luxury Vacation Lead Forge. Perfect. Jamaica. I missed that chat there, Wayne. Welcome from Jamaica. It's exciting. Okay, so last week on the call, we used this PRD tool. A fair amount of you have used this. You just put in your no-code project idea, and it spits out a product requirements document that will let you just copy and paste right into Replit or Bolt or Lovable or any of the other AI coding tools and give you the initial version of your application very quickly and well organized. So on last week's call, we did this for a lead capture chatbot that is going to capture leads for luxury vacation bookings. That's the goal of this. And as it stands, all it has is the PRD was submitted. It built the first version of the application. Now we are going to find out what was built, what was not. Those of you who were here last week saw that we found some of the information was faked right out of the gate. So we're going to uncover how that looks, and I'm going to show you some tips on how to find that information without breaking the application, and then strategically add in the real functionality on top of replace the fake stuff out. That's what we're going to do. Bogota, Colombia, welcome. Okay, just to show you the thing we found immediately in this chatbot last week is that if you put in a question, it'll greet you. So it does this little welcome. And if you just, it's supposed to be AI enabled, dynamically respond to the conversation and keep it on track with the qualifications. But if you ask it something, I think last week we did, where's my dog? And it just kind of gives us a boilerplate little answer here. Thanks for sharing. Helps us customize the perfect vacation experience for you. The original project was supposed to have AI connected. And from the build over here, watching the build, I was pretty sure that it didn't do that connection for a very specific reason. It never asked us for a key to connect to OpenAI. So that would be kind of like an obvious giveaway that it didn't actually build that functionality. But we are going to start with a process that I recommend everybody use as their first step after they enter their instruction list and it builds the first version. This is a step you should always take. And that prompt is going to be to tell it to look over the application and see what was actually built and outline it for us, and see what was faked and outline that for us. Okay, so we have our prompt here. I'm going to read this out. It's, can you please look through the files and any database or features that are in this application and outline for me what is fully functional versus what is currently stubbed out. When you're building applications, stubbing out features is a very common structure, and that's basically where you create placeholders for features. Maybe it's a placeholder page, maybe it's a placeholder API route in the back end. It's like, we're going to add this and we want to not forget that it's going there, but we're not going to build that feature right now. And these platforms are programmed off of, they're trained off of regular coding processes. So because that's a common process, they will just by default do that in many cases. That's how we end up with features that we expect to be here and aren't here. Always, always, if you are not sure what you're fixing or changing, add this do not make changes at the end of your prompt. Always. If any of you have been wandering about on my TikTok or Reddit comments, you'll see me say this a lot. All right, so it says these are functional. I'm not sure about validation because it let me put in a fake number. We'd have to look and see if that validation is actually true. Qualification response tracking, okay. And it's got the configuration. This is something that's built out. Yes, it's functional, but it's not what we wanted. So qualification question structure. This would be, it's built basically a library of questions. And we want to have more of an AI back and forth if we want this to be really dynamic and engaging. This qualification question structure is a first version, and then we would want to migrate that over to an AI integration and use our system prompt for the AI to ask these questions. All right, here we go. Placeholder components. The generate AI response is there as a mock response. Who here knows what a webhook is? For those that haven't played with webhooks before, they are a quick and easy way to send information from one platform to another. So in the case of this, we would expect that the user of this platform has a CRM somewhere. And the webhook is just our method of taking all the leads' answers and their contact information and sending it over to the CRM. It allows us to put in a single link to map that information over. I highly recommend you use them, especially if you have Zapier or Make or something like that is available to you. And we have this, of course, it said that system prompt exists, but it's not used. System prompt, when you send a message to an AI to get a response back, there's two things you send. The system prompt, which is the rules about how it should behave. And then there's the user prompt, which is your question or comment that needs responding to. And so the system prompt would say things like, don't engage in discussions outside of qualifying these leads, for example. And then the prompt would actually be what the user types in as their answer. Let's see here. We've got a webhook integration. It is configured, but doesn't point to a real endpoint. The data structure is defined, but not sent anywhere. All right, this is something we needed. User management, no authentication system, no user session persistence, no admin interface. So we need to be able to configure this application, and there's none of that was built out. That was in the original request, but it's not built out yet. Database and abandonment tracking. This is a feature that would be later on if somebody doesn't finish the entire conversation. We want to still be able to send that after a period of time so we can follow up with that lead. This is a process you should use in any of them, whether you're doing Replit or right on your computer in Windsurf or Cursor or something like that. Always find out what was built and what needs to be added back. Now, here's the next step of this. We don't want to make a change yet. We want to say, make us a document of this so we can come back to it. We're going to give it a name. Okay. So a .md file is a markdown file. It's just regular documentation that you can put throughout your application so that you can come back to it. It's really handy to have with AI coding because then you can it's basically a placeholder. It says this is where we were, and we can go back and reference it at any point. So if I get interrupted and want to come back to this coding project, I can come back to this MD file and just pick up where I left off. I know where I was. So use MD files all the time. This is what it's writing. You can see basically what it wrote out for us. Pretty cool, right? Next, my general process would be database, then user management, then AI integration. But is there something in particular that many of you feel like is a piece that you really want to see on today's call?
Hi. I think this is a good point for one of the questions that I had. In when you're building, do you think full stack or front end first, back end second, or back end first, front end second? What do you tend to find gets you better, like long-term results?
I generally find that thinking of both pieces is key for the first prompt. For example, if you're going to use a PRD generator, just as an
Yeah.
example, or if you're going to go talk with ChatGPT to get a PRD or something like that, you want to describe both sets of functions, even if it's just a very basic manner, so that you do get these stubbed out features for your backend functionality. And it doesn't just build you a pretty website that you then have to go in and remap all the information because it's statically coded. These applications, such as Lovable, Replit, Bolt, they're very good at building out the front end, and then the back end is and functionality is where you need to really dig in and be surgical about what you're doing. Better, I just shared that link there in the chat for you. It's the PRD tool. It's something I built for myself, and because I needed it, and then it's turned out to be useful for a lot of folks. So it's just out there. That was built entirely in Replit, and it's hosted on Replit. So in case you're interested in an app that was built end to end there. I see a lot of questions online about database setup and user auth setup. So let's see how far we get in that process today. And we'll start with the database. Okay, so here's what we're going to put in. Let's map out the database and user auth situation for this app so that users can log in, just an admin. We just want an admin for this, and access a backend to edit the webhook and see records of leads collected. No local or in-memory storage. Are you all familiar with the difference between like database storage and local or in-memory storage? In-memory storage is basically, it exists when the app is running and in your browser, and then the moment you leave, everything that you put into the app is forgotten. Your login, any leads that were created, they're ephemeral, they just vanish. And the AI code builders love to put that in for some reason. I like to specify that. We're going to map out this path for what I want. We're telling it we're going to use Supabase. That is because Lovable has a Supabase integration right here. And so it's the one it understands. And then we're going to see if I like the plan or not. And we'll kind of go through that plan together and make sure it makes sense. Okay. Again, do not make changes. I don't want to change anything yet. And if it decides to ignore my instruction, we're going to tell it to stop and don't make changes. We have an admin authentication. It's going to use Supabase Auth. I will show you what that means. We have a login page, session persistence, logout functionality, and password reset. That's great basic features for our setup here. We have a leads table. I want to make sure that this matches. We have name, email, phone. And that's basically what we have here. We have their answers. We have conversations. This might be duplicate stuff, but it's not necessarily an issue to have duplicate tables. We'll clean that up if we need to. This is our configuration. So as it's built right now, the webhook has to be manually put into the code, and we want to be able to save that in the database so we can change it out easily as a user without going into the code. So that's what it's building here. This is our system prompt that I talked about. We're going to be able to enter that. Our key questions that we want asked, follow-up questions, and then security policies. Okay, this looks correct. Cool. So we have a good plan here to build this out, but I'm going to show you something where that tends to go awry on this sort of build, and show you how to just get in front of it. Whenever you get ready to start this, we know it's going to use Supabase, and it will build stuff out and then ask you to connect your Supabase. I have seen pretty much every single one of these platforms make this mistake. It'll build it out, ask you to connect, and when you go to connect it, it gets lost during the connection process. And there's a small thing you can do to reduce the risk of that, and that is create your connection first and then have it build it out. I don't know exactly why these apps treat it differently if you create the connection first, but it does seem to help out. Let me show you how to make that in Lovable here. You will have to have a Supabase account. Your first database is free. Question there from Tom. What do I find the preferred auth for Replit? Tried Supabase, Firebase, both okay, but annoying bits. Clerk didn't really work, and Replit auth nowhere near ready. Any better than others for simple and clean integration? Okay, for Replit, I a lot of times will build the auth just with the database and a simple auth that's managed with tokens right inside the app. Like I won't use an external service if it's just simple auth. Like for example, this PRD tool, it's not connected to anything other than the database. It's just a user login, and I don't have any fancy toolkits built in. It's a webhook for password reset, so it sends a webhook information to my CRM, and that manages all the emails. You can't do a database in Lovable without the Supabase. That's the one that they've connected it to, unless you want to really push it to try another database connection, and it'll fight you on that. So in here, you would generally use Supabase auth. Clerk. Okay, so if anybody's trying Clerk, you mentioned that in there, Tom, and it's a good one. I like Clerk a lot. You have to go find the documentation for your code stack that Replit has built. You need to put that documentation into a platform that can turn it into a markdown file, and then give that markdown file to Replit or your code builder so it can have proper documentation, because it's pulling information from 2023 and that doesn't work. So that's how you fix that issue. All right, so if you have a Supabase account, mine is already connected. We're just going to create a new project, and we are going to name this vacation lead bot demo, and we're going to put in a password. All right, I would always copy this in case you need it later, because you're not going to really be able to see it later. Here, this is where you pick your database location. For folks that are not in the United States, it's good to pick a location that is within your proper data protection areas. So I know different parts of the world have different data protection rules. Pick one that follows your data protection area. Sound good? All right, we're going to create this project. Takes a moment to create. You can always scale them up. This is a micro project, and it's just fine for now. Okay. So now we are going to close this. That'll come back in a second. When you create the project, it takes a minute to go, so that you can go down here and start having it prep for that project now that it's created. I'm telling it I've created a Supabase database to attach. Please begin that setup, and we will proceed following that, one step at a time. Okay. And I will say that connecting up a database, you can generally find that the AI will connect it correctly. A good expectation is about 80% of the time. 20% of the time, it's going to do something silly and you have to backtrack. That's just a piece that you have to accept.
Hey, Courtney.
Yes.
The one step at a time, is that similar to how you use make no changes?
Yes. So the one step at a time thing, it does tend to help. You just have to watch it close and make sure it doesn't try to run off. But generally speaking, one step at a time, it's going to start with whatever pieces are necessary to connect the database here in this case. And then it's going to offer the option to link the database. And then it will tell me that it's ready to start the next step. That's generally the behavior you get. Here we're writing several files that are necessary for our functions that we've described. So the admin dashboard, things like that is needed for the database connection so that it has all the correct paths and so that it has all of the correct schema written into the application so it can talk to the database. Something that I didn't point out earlier, when you do this right here, create that like little MD file with documentation for your current state of the application, like where you left off or where you are right now, this creates a restore point. And so now we're doing this database setup, which, like I said, about 80% of the time it's going to go straight, and 20% of the time it'll wander off somewhere. You can just go back to that restore point. You've created it in a way that doesn't affect the application at all. It's just a document file. So we can quickly go back there to the state of the application if it wanders off track when setting this up. Does that make sense for everyone? Dual purpose there. Thumbs up from Tony. I like it. Okay, so it says to complete the setup, we've run into an error here and it's missing the variables. And what this just means is the app tried to run and it said, hey, where's my database? And the database isn't there. So it says we need to add the URL and a non-key as the environment variables. Now, this is interesting. This is what I was talking about as far as the integration going right or wrong. Generally, it will offer an option to just connect the database. Instead of that, it created environment variables to use. And I'm not sure if I would like to put in the environment variables or ask it if we can, if it'll actually do its default connection type. So I think I would like to see if it will do its default connection type. And then if it fails, we'll put in the environment variables. Sound good to everyone? Let's put that in here. We're going to say, can you do the connection to the database automatically using your Supabase integration? We're just going to ask it that. If not, we'll back up and say, okay, we'll put in the environment variables. Let's see what it comes up with. While that is loading. Okay. Yeah, it is not liking its own integration. Let's do this and do it manually. Connect. Our database is here. I wanted to see if it would give us the little pop-up with Supabase, but it did not. So we're going to do it like this. Okay. Here we go. Looks like you haven't created any tables. So it's now connected. What I did there, generally it will give you a prompt here with a button that you click. And it happens most of the time. It'll give you a little prompt and you click the button and it'll connect to Supabase. Because it didn't do that, and I'm kind of glad it didn't, because now you get to see what happens if it wanders off on its path. We had already created the Supabase and I was able to just click here and go and connect it. All right, so we have this. We're connected up and we're going to say, please do build and run the database migrations for the tables you outlined above and correct app to use the connection, not environment variables. Variables. Do not make other changes. Okay. Let's send that through. Let's set up migrations here. Let us apply those changes. Database migrations are simply the process that the AI or any developer sends to the database to create all of the structures that we need, the tables, the columns, everything like that. So it is finishing this piece up here. And now we have our application loading again without the error. So now we're connected to our database. Pretty cool. Create an admin login along the way. Look at that. It's pretty fun. Now, there is an issue that you will run into when you are trying to build an admin login using Supabase. And that is, this is a fake local environment for the app to live in. It's not published yet. When you go to log in, even if it connected it up correctly here, what's going to happen is Supabase has, by default, an email verification turned on. So when you go to log in or create the user, it will try to send you an email, and then you click the link in the email and it'll fail. Let me show you how to turn that off for development. We're going to go in here to, this is the thing we built. We're going to go into authentication. And we are going to go into sign in providers, go to email, and we are going to turn off this confirmed email during development. Remember to turn that back on when you're done. Just remember that step if you're connecting to Supabase. All right. Now I didn't read closely enough to see if it made an admin user here. We'll just ask it. Did you create an admin user? Do not make changes. I don't want it to go making one right now. I want to see the answer to the question. All right, so it says register a new user through the login page. So I don't think this is a register, but let's see. We're just going to put me in. Super secret password over here. And see, it's not actually a register. So the question is, I don't see a page here for register. So let's ask it if it made a register page or if we just need to do the migration. Okay, it says we need to create one. Please create that.
Can I just ask while you're talking about admin stuff, what's your workflow for dealing with admin things? Do you normally disable having to log in for working on front end stuff? Or do you, because the amount of obviously like refreshes and server restarts, or do you run into any issues with that kind of thing?
The issues are numerous and common. And the advice I give is please make the admin setup first so that you are addressing those issues with every piece you add and change in the back end. Because if you don't, what's going to happen, if you disable admin features and let yourself access the whole back end without it, and you build that out, and then you go try to apply restrictions to those back end pieces after the fact, it will virtually never do that correctly. And you will find that you break a bunch of the functionality that you spent all the time building out, and you have to go find where it created session storage or local storage to give you access to those items that should have been connected to admin the whole time. It's an excellent question. I would say, I get on a lot of support calls each week to work on people's individual apps, and that particular issue is 30% of them.
So what do you do then? Do you just have a login? Because let's say on the kind of fairly full-featured SaaS that I'm working on, there's like 4 login. There's a hierarchy. There's like super admin, admin, user, unauthenticated, right? So I'm trying to test each of them. I've built one of them. I've built a switch basically that just allows me to be those users on login, which I'm thinking I'll delete later. Others I've wary about like code bloat and what it does knowing there's a switch in, so I'm trying to just log in every single time, but it's just the boring part of copying and pasting every single time you do anything.
Yes, it is a little annoying to do that. I mean, I oftentimes will save it in password manager so it's a little faster, and I create users. I generally will myself as the admin when I'm building an app out for myself or a demo like this. And then I will create users that are, the email address is basically named whatever that user type is. And I save those in password manager so that I can go back in and say, this is sub admin for this application. And that's my login for that, just to make it a little quicker and more organized. But if at all possible, always add your admin capability. Here's our register. Let's see if it built it. Said it was successful. Save that, see if it works. Hey, we got auth and it let us in and kicked us right back out, didn't it? That was exciting. Let's open this up in a new tab. So when you log in like that and it kicks you back out, it probably messed up something with storage in the application, but I always like to test it in a browser at this point and see if it really messed up storage or if it was just that window browser that we were in. We're going to put it in here, and you can, again, I'm in a new tab, so I'll have to resave the information for the first time if I want to. We are in our admin dashboard. It hasn't kicked me out yet, which makes me think it was just an issue with this particular iframe portal that didn't hold the session. I was talking with somebody earlier today, maybe it was Carlene, I think. We had a conversation and I mentioned that it's good to test your stuff outside of the little build window. And this is exactly why. We've got some button color issues, but we have created our little back end. Here's our system prompt that we can edit. And here's where we can add our qualifying questions that the AI is going to use. So we have gone from just a little front end that was just a bunch of pretend information to adding admin functionality, a database, and a bunch of back-end pieces that we can use for making this a functional application. That didn't take too long. Got through it pretty quick without too many wandering arounds. All right, we are at our time here in just a minute or two. We got pretty far with this, and I will take a look and see if there's a fun thing to do with it on the next call, or I'm always interacting on YouTube and Reddit and TikTok. A lot of folks ask questions there, so these calls are informed by the common questions that I get there. So sometimes I'll see something asked a lot, and that becomes our call topic. So if we don't proceed with this app next week, it's because there was a common topic that needed to be covered for a lot of folks. Sound good? And I hope to see you all next week.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, please like and follow. And if you need help building or finishing your app, click the link in my bio to book a one-on-one Zoom call to take a look at your project.